Well, I am Lost Alternative. I want to share a build I recently made. It has 30 Vigor, 40 Strength, and 40 Dex. I made this build sort of for the shits and giggles of it, but it's been really fun to use, so I just want to share it with you. To make this build, you're going to need to get to 25 Vigor. You're going to get 18 Strength, and you're going to get 20 Dexterity. Now for all the equipment you're going to need. You're going to need Radagon Sword Seal. You're going to need the Star Scourge Talisman. And you're going to need Millicent's Prosthesis. You get those 3 talismans and you're all good. After that, you're going to want to grab the Dex and Strength Knot tiers for your Physic. That will bump you up from having a 30 and 30 and 30 in your damaging and health to having 30, 40, and 40. So obviously, that's a lot of stats. Is this useful? Actually, not really. So at this low of a level and low of a weapon upgrade, you're not going to get that much bang for your buck for all of those numbers. But you still do damn good damage, so it's worth it, honestly. Not only that, this build is super versatile. You're going to be able to wield basically any weapon. Hell, if you move a few stats around, you can probably wield the Giant's Crusher. Very, very fun build. So this build does have like a few weaknesses. One of the big ones that I'm going to talk about is going to be status effects. Bleed, madness, sleep, these are all going to be really bad for you because you're such a low level. You don't have a lot of resistances built up, and any armor you have available to you is not going to give you a lot of resistances either. So you're going to want to be very cognizant of those when they're popping up. Of course, this goes for all status effects at this level. It's just that rot, poison, and frost are going to be a little less difficult to deal with. Another problem is going to be mages. With this build, you have to hit someone. You have to get up close to really use your stats to your advantage, unless you want to snipe with a ballista, of course, but that's not all that fun, right? We're in this to go hit people with swords, right? At least I am. So let's go hit people with swords then, shall we? I suggest trying to just close the gap and get in on mages. Also, mages at a low level, especially if they're like the host, they will have the lowest resistances of any class. So if you have like just like a weapon that can incidentally do bleed, throw it on there and hit them a few times, they'll probably bleed out. Okay, so those are the weaknesses this build has. My overall thoughts on the build is that it's just a very great place to start invading. If you have never invaded before, this is like the build to start out with, because you're going to be able to learn all the fundamentals of invading. How do you manage your stamina? What about your HP, your healing? What weapons do I like? Because you could pick any weapon you want. Now I'm going to recommend a few equipment and consumables that I use. First things first, you'll notice I only mentioned 3 talismans. You can pick up a 4th one, and that can be many, many, many different ones. I tend to start with the host's trick mirror, which just makes you look like a host. Makes you look pretty. I like it. Concealing veil is also very good for hiding away from like big groups if you need to. Beyond that, you're going to want some defensive ones because you're going to lose some damage negation from the Source Seal. So you're going to want things like Crimson Seed, you're going to want the Ritual Shield Talisman, you're going to want Blessed Dew Talisman, you're going to want Stalwart Horn Charm, and you're going to want Clarifying Horn Charm. Those are really good talismans that will patch up your resistances and patch up your damage negations. So now let's talk a little bit about weapons. Weapons, you can choose any, but these are the ones that have been really good for me. First one to talk about is going to be the Serpent Bone Blade. As a katana, it's going to have really good rundowns, and it has lots of great roll catching potential as it's, a katana. And it, with the added benefit of deadly poison, you end up getting a pressure machine. We are able to put folks into feeling like they need to roll, they need to heal, they need to back up. These are all really good things to have, especially with a katana. It's a fast weapon. So the next weapon I want to talk about is going to be the Crescent Axe. Crescent Axe is actually really great, and it's why I made this build in the first place. Um, I wanted to test it out and just see how good it was. I got it in my first playthrough, and I never really touched it, but it's really nice. For a great axe, I've never really expected them to be roll catch machines, but this one's really good at it. So I've been really enjoying that. Also, it has a really unique R2 that you can just sort of throw out there. Has some good hyper armor on it. It's really nice to use. Beyond that, I've messed with changing the ashes on it a bit, and I like Stamp Sweep for it because while it's similar to the R2, it's still a mix-up in timing. And I think that's really, really nice to have. Another one to really go for is Lion's Claw for like really immediate hyper armor, because the R2's hyper armor doesn't come out straight away. If you're still charging the R2, they can hit you out of that. But if you've let go, then you get your hyper armor going. Anyhow, the other weapons that I choose for this build is the Iron Cleaver. Once again, I've never really messed with the Iron Cleaver all that much, um, but its R2 makes you like run forward a little bit. Very, 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 very nice. And I'm a big fan of weapons that let you do this. In Dark Souls 3, the broadsword had a R2 that did this. And it was a roll catch machine, and it should be no surprise the Iron Cleaver takes after that and excels at it. I put endurance on that particular weapon as well, so it has a lot of trading potential, and it's very, very fast. It's super spammable, so you can just press endure and R1, R1, R1 until the day's done. So I really, really, really heavily suggest using this one. Another weapon to use is the Lord Sworn's Greatsword. The Lord Sworn's Greatsword is a very basic weapon. You get it very, very early on, but what it's really good at is having a high base damage. And that's really important for early on in the game because you don't have a lot of scaling. So you can sort of sit there and lean on the base damage while still getting like an incredible amount of damage for this soul level, right? So really, really good. I just used a very, very, very basic stamp uppercut for it because I like stamp uppercut. Probably one of my favorite ashes to use. So that's really talking about the first version of this build. I ended up changing it around. So in the second version of this build, I took out all of my dex investment. I put it into endurance and faith so that I can wield all my armor without swapping things around, and so that I can get bestial vitality. Bestial vitality gives you a whole lot of regen. You add that to your Blessed Dew talisman, and you are healing back a massive amount. So when you're in the more passive kind of invasions, you don't have to chug your essences and lose out on them. And you can do that really, really early. Blessed Dew and Bestial Vitality, easy to grab early on. Um, Beyond that, I also swapped out my Dex Knot tier for the Crimson Bubble and the Crimson World tier to deal with mages and to get a little bit extra healing when they aren't expecting it, which is very, very useful. You can make a really early game version of this. You don't need to have all 4 talisman slots and special armor and everything. You can just get like the bare bones stat increasement tallies and the very basic weapons, and you will do just fine with this build. you don't really need to like go running all around. So it's very quick to set up as a build. So I just heavily suggest picking up this build if you're new to invading, because this is the build that you learn on. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe. And join me on Twitch. I tend to stream there more often than I do YouTube videos. So thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day, night, or whatever time it is where you're at. Until next time. Bye.